What form will the activities of these various so-called invisible movements take in Harlem this summer?
An example, frustration itself has been sufficient, all that was necessary to make Negroes realize the importance of banding together, and Negroes are banding together.
James Farr, live from Pasadena Media Studios. Get ready for more piercing and provocative. The conversation about police oversight starts right now. Coming up today, I'm having a two-part conversation. Earlier today, I sat down with Mayor Terry Tornek. Right now, I'm going to sit down with Councilmember Victor Gordo, who is a councilman of the 5th District here in the city of Pasadena. And I'm going to be asking both of them two of the same questions. Also, we'll see some videos that will roll in for context and to help further our discussion. And so, Victor, welcome. Thanks so much for being here with us. How are you doing today?
Doing well, James. I'd like to thank you and your viewers for taking the time to talk about these important and pressing issues that are before us.
All right. So we're going to talk about police civilian oversight. I promise I'll give you plenty of time to give your point and your position on that. I also want to discuss our city government and the structure of our city manager as opposed to our public safety chiefs, fire, police reporting directly to the council. We want to talk about Pasadena police use of force. But coming up first, we're in a real interesting time right now. We're seeing across the country African-American men, black men that are losing their lives either while in police custody, being detained by police, being pursued by police. Protests have erupted across the country and even the world for that matter. And Pasadena is no different. We're not immune to it. So I want to look at some of the demonstrations that took place right here in our city just a couple of weeks ago and have continued in our city. And I want to get your reaction on the other side. You roll in that first video, Charles.
We're here to bring attention to the humiliating way that people of color are treated by law enforcement. Anyone who raises their voice to defend the destruction of property and businesses and have not spoken anything condemning the senseless violence against black people at the hands, the guns, and the knees of those sworn to protect and serve our citizens. You don't get it.
What are you willing to give? This is not cute. These protests are not decoration.
We keep dying over and over and over again. Yes, we see arrests, but there has not been one conviction ever.
A foot is on my neck every day. I want you to make sure that the people that you vote for are actually going to do the things that they say they're going to do.
And welcome back. Victor, you were there on that Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was.
What was your reaction? How did you experience it?
It wasn't just that Tuesday that I was there. I was there the Sunday before, or Monday. I don't recall now. I believe it was Sunday. And my reaction at both events is, this is real. This is raw. It's serious. People are looking to speak up and speak out. And I was proud of the fact that people from all walks of life were willing to do that. I was also proud of the fact that in exercising our concern and exercising the raw emotion and in communicating the seriousness of the situation, in Pasadena, people did it respectfully. I'm not saying people weren't pointed, I'm not saying people weren't direct, but it was done in a very different way than in other places, and we should all be proud of that.
I mean, you had a chance to speak, and my experience, and I'm speaking as someone that was in the audience and attended, and you made some remarks. I got to tell you, I think they just fell kind of flat. I think you missed the opportunity to really address why we were there. Have you had an opportunity to reflect on what you did or did not say in front of that crowd of over 5,000?
You know, it's always important to reflect. And, you know, my comments were directed at the audience and to the broader Pasadena community. You know, we need change, one. Two, what happened to Mr. Floyd is unacceptable, and we should do everything that we can to prevent it, not just in Pasadena, the county, the state, but the entire country, if not the world. And three, we also have to recognize that seeing all of these people work together, come together, should give us a sense of hope that we can achieve real, impactful, and lasting change. And so as I've reflected on this moment in time, as I've reflected on where I believe we should be as a city, of course, you know, every day, just like the situation around us changes every day, we have to have the flexibility of mind as elected officials to adjust with it. And absolutely, I like to believe that Pasadena as a whole has the flexibility of mind to adjust. And I like to believe that I have the same.
You know, because people are, when I talk with people in community, and social media can sometimes just go in, as they say in the culture. You know, we're looking for connection points. I mean, you're a husband, you're a father, I'm a husband, I'm a father. But when we look at how our children are experiencing this, you know, and then we kind of see you in leadership. You've been on the council for 19 years. This incident that happened with Mr. Floyd is not exclusive to Minnesota. I mean, it happens here in Pasadena, not quite to that extent, obviously, but there have been some that have lost their lives to police and the use of force. Why now? I mean, why are you kind of in this space now, whereas before maybe some don't think that you were?
You know, my position has always been clear and consistent. I support strong police oversight. In fact, oversight of every city department. But I support it by those who are elected and accountable to the people. If we need to improve that system, we should do that. And I have always been open to doing that. I was with you not too long ago when you asked me about that very question. And I think it's, again, getting back to the flexibility of mind and adjusting to the circumstances. I continue to be open. I think we need a very direct discussion and response. What we saw in that video is horrific. You know, and in most situations where you have use of force and or violence, you know, you don't see the horrificness. You know, sometimes you see glimpses of it, but this was so different in that, you know, these officers really had no mercy for someone who was asking for it. And, you know, it's unacceptable. And if it can happen in another part of the country, then we have to take the precautions necessary and change the circumstances in order to avoid it in Pasadena or elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, because this has been a conversation ongoing for quite some time. I mean, as long as I've been alive, and hopefully it could end soon, right? So it's nothing new. And, you know, you talk about our oversight and our elected officials being the ones that are charged with that oversight. But, you know, when you guys are given the opportunity to provide that oversight, sometimes we just, as a community, citizens, we just don't feel like it's there. So I want to show another video, Victor, and I understand and expect that you may not be able to comment on it. But I want to show this because some of the audience may not know, others may have seen, but I want to get your reaction, not as a council member, but as a father. So, Charles, if we can go ahead and roll in segment 3, and we'll talk with Victor on the other side.
Dad, why are cops killing kids?
Every night, I wake up at 3 in the morning with the same nightmare. I can't sleep at night. I get anxiety whenever I see a police car.
On November 9th, 2017, Pasadena police officers Larry Esparza and Zachary Lujan battered Christopher Ballou, punching him, striking him with a baton, and smashing his head on the pavement, in an incident that allegedly began as a minor traffic stop for tinted windows. Despite the substantial use of force, all charges against Ballou were dropped.
Better stop back like a dummy, dude.
What?
Yeah, Woodbury, Fair Oaks. Give me your hand.
All right, give me your hand right now.
You want to act like a dummy, dude? Point at me, bro. Help me understand, why you ended up in a fight with two of my cops.
So I mean, the fight really shouldn't cost us all.
Well, there's video, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
And welcome back. Victor, people have been gathering in the name of Black Lives Matter. Now for the last 6 years, and as it continues. But when you see that, do you feel like Black Lives matter?
I'm glad you asked me the question in the first instance as a father, as a resident of the city, and myself as an immigrant who has grown up in Pasadena. I absolutely, I believe that. I believe Black Lives Matter. I believe that brown lives matter. I believe all our lives matter. But, having said that, I do believe that we need to recognize some of the actions of the past and recognize that the feeling and the perspective of specifically African Americans is important to recognize at this moment. We would be in denial if we didn't. We would be negligent if we refused to.
Because, we were told as a community, as civilians, to trust the process, that body cameras would provide a new lens into how policing is happening. And in that video, again, one of the officers did not turn on his body-worn camera. Had it not been for a third-party video, then, we probably wouldn't have known about this. So I think we're being asked to trust the process, but I don't know that we trust you and the city council and the city manager to actually be the stewards of that process, because it seems to happen again and again. What do you say about that?
I think that's a fair point. And what in reflecting on what's happened and what's happening today, the point made when you say that to me is all the clearer. And we have to do things differently. We have to do things in a way that engenders trust, that brings about transparency. It has to be meaningful change. It can't be window dressing. But I think we can stick to our core value, at least my core value, that I'm elected to do a job. The Public Safety Committee is appointed to do a job. And we ought to hold them accountable. And Los Angeles has a commission of civilians. And I don't see the transparency and the trust that people look for.
That's my next question, Victor. I promise you, I'm going to give you plenty of runway to talk about oversight and how you see it and what that means to you. But right now, like I said, this is just two fathers having a conversation, and as we are experiencing things, and some of the things that I've seen happen when Reginald Thomas was killed by officers. Happened just across the street from your district. I didn't see you or any other council members there. And then when Kendrick McDade was killed, you said in open session that Kendrick would be alive if he had not committed a criminal act. Do you have a different take on that now? Is that something that you know, again, in hindsight, you understand it differently?
Well, let me first correct the record that where Reginald Thomas died is in my district, and I did go out there to visit. You know, and
on the first day?
Not on the first day. I don't recall
Okay.
specifically when,
Yeah.
but it's in my district on Orange Grove.
Okay.
Not across the street from my district. You know, in terms of Kendrick McDade and those facts and circumstances, every situation is different, and we have to recognize that. You know, I have a 15-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter who live with me and my wife in the Northwest, and I got to tell you, when all of these events started to occur, I was concerned, like many parents, maybe you also, about my kids walking around the neighborhood, and you know, for various reasons, absolutely, you know, reflecting and thinking about situations, I would say to you that everything is shifted in the last few weeks, and we would be dishonest if we didn't say we would handle situations differently. Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Your son, excuse me, you know, big kid, big young man. He's tall. But how is he seeing and experiencing this? I mean, like, Dad is the one that's supposed to be in charge of this stuff. You are the oversight. How does that kitchen table conversation happen when maybe, like, I and others are looking at you like, what are you going to do about it?
You know, that's interesting that you asked that, because they are very real conversations. When I watched the video of what happened to George Floyd, I was stunned, I was shocked, and I could see particularly my daughter was viscerally affected, and she had the question, you know, can this happen in Pasadena? And you know, as an elected official in Pasadena, I think we all have to take stock of the fact that this can happen anywhere, and that's why our action to the circumstances around us, and given the information, we have to take decisive action, and it has to be different.
Okay.
We can't go back to doing what we used to do.
All right. I want to get to, because we're going to get hard up on the time, and as I promised, I want to make sure that I get to police oversight. I'm going to call back a question that we asked you on February 16th at the mayoral candidates forum. I want to know, have you evolved from where you were then? Where are you now? Charles, let's go ahead and roll in the first segment, the first question of number 4.
Pasadena's police department has encountered recent challenges, including litigation, settlements, and rough patches in community police relations. Would civilian oversight of the police be a good idea? If so, and you played a role in implementing an approach, what would it look like? If not, why?
It's on you, Victor.
You know, as I've said, I'm a strong believer in oversight in every department. I think it's part and parcel with our responsibility as a city. And clearly, what we have at the moment is not bringing about the confidence and the transparency that people expect. And it's our job as elected officials to, one, do our job of oversight of the police department, but do it in a way that's responsible and where we are accountable. You know, I don't want to be like Los Angeles, where, you know, people bring me their concerns directly, and I say, go talk to the police commission, a body that's not accountable to the people of Los Angeles, and wash my hands of it. I do think we can strike a balance where we have, outside of the city manager and city attorney chain of command, where we have direct input from someone who doesn't work for the police chief, someone who doesn't work for the city manager and or the city attorney, where I can say to the residents of Pasadena and my constituents, I have an unvarnished view. And I agree that's been a frustration. And we need to change that, and I'm prepared to head in that direction.
Let's talk about police use of force and settlements paid out. Charles, can you go ahead and roll in the segment 5? We're about 6 minutes before we got to get out of here, Victor. A couple more questions to get through.
Like most cities, Pasadena has paid out its share of expenses for legal costs and settlements related to allegations against its police department. Has the city paid too much? Or is this simply the cost of engaging in law enforcement during these sometimes volatile times?
Are we just writing checks, Victor?
We do pay too much. Let me say this. Whatever model we end up with, and I'm prepared to suggest my own model, my own ideas, and I think I have a responsibility to do that. And we all have a responsibility to do that as elected officials. Has to mitigate first and foremost the unnecessary use of force. It's not about money. Yeah, we pay too much because regrettably we find ourselves in situations where force is used. Now, we're never going to be able to rid, as long as we have a police department who we ask to protect and to act in serious situations, we're never going to rid ourselves of litigation. But that should be the goal, and we should lead with attempting to de-escalate, to provide better training, to properly screen officers, and to have full transparency. And it's going to take all of us pulling together because there may be needed changes in the charter. There may be needed changes in state law. But certainly we start with taking stock ourselves of how we can do a better job and what we need as a city and as a city council to put in place a model that is one that brings about more confidence in the system than is currently there.
When we talk about the city charter, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that's exactly where I wanted to go. In terms of getting some sort of oversight, it will require that 5 council members vote in favor of it. And right now the current structure is you guys oversee the city manager, and the city council rather oversees the city manager as well as the clerk and the city attorney's office. And then we're talking about this oversight and the process of transparency. So when you saw the Blue video, as a council member, you guys are not privileged to seeing that, correct?
To seeing the
use of force. You have no oversight over personnel matters in the police department.
That's right. In limited circumstances when it comes to litigation. When it's time to write the checks.
Correct. And so currently the city manager supervises the police chief. So I guess my question is, should we have our public safety chiefs, fire, police, report directly to the council? Or should the structure continue to be where they're reporting to the city manager? And now we're in a situation where if it's the city manager's call, people are still upset because we feel like they may feel like he didn't do anything. So are you pleased with the job that the city manager is doing?
You know, that's a whole lot of questions there.
That's three.
Let me start with the with the charter. I think we have to be serious in thinking through our structure at City Hall. You know, one of the frustrations that I've had as a member of the City Council is we receive information from the people who are actors in specific situations. You know, as I'm reflecting on this moment in time, I'm reflecting not just for police oversight. I want to give that the appropriate weight and attention that it deserves now. I think it's incumbent upon us as elected officials to think through how we can improve our city in general. And I'm thinking about, you know, COVID gripped the city before the George Floyd situation did. And there are questions there. Before COVID, cannabis gripped the city and brought it to a standstill. And before that, the development process, and before that, embezzlements. And so I think it's important, and I'm going to challenge us as a city to think through a change that's substantive, that's real, and that recognizes that we need unvarnished information, not necessarily from the people whose conduct may be called into question, but we need independent information from someone who maybe isn't a part of the police chief's chain of command, who isn't even a part of the city manager, the city attorney, or the city clerk's chain of command.
Are you pleased with the job?
Advise the council.
But are you pleased with the job that the city manager is doing?
You know, I'm not going to comment on the job that any of the staff is doing. I'm going to comment on the job that I believe as a city council we need to do and improve. It gets back to the accountability. It's the members of the city council that should be challenged to improve the process, to help the staff do a better job, and to be able to say to the people of Pasadena, we are conducting oversight, not just for police, but for every department in a way that you can trust. That's the challenge. That's the challenge for me as an individual council member, and I believe that's the challenge for the council collectively. And that is what I'm going to set about to do.
All right, Victor, I'm going to park it right there because we're hard up on the time. I know your schedule's busy, and I do, appreciate you taking time to stop by just to have this conversation. There will be plenty of time for us to really do a deep dive in terms of where we're headed as a city at a future date. So again, Victor, thank you so much. My guest is Victor Gordo, council member of the 5th District. I'm James Farr, I'm your host. Until we have another opportunity to speak with you, as always, agape.